If you could look into a crystal ball and see the eventual reason why you're going to fail or not become the person you want to become in life, I think that you would look at things very differently, because most people think that the reason they're not going to reach their potential is because they have a skill issue, or it's their confidence, or it's their network, or it's their net worth, or it's their family, or it's where they come from, or it's what they look like, or it's who they are as a person. But in my experience, both with myself and with the most successful people I know, none of that is the leading reason. Sure, it all plays a role. I'd be silly if I said it didn't. But the real reason that 95% of people never get to where they want to in life, the real reason why 95% of people watching this video will never reach their potential, is because they look at things in too much of a short-term way. They do not expand their time horizons. And you're probably guilty of this as well, because for most of my life I was. Now, if you're sat here on YouTube, you definitely know who Mr. Beast is, and you know that he has something like 250 million subscribers. He's gonna become the first YouTuber on the planet to one day have 1 billion subscribers. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows who he is, but most people don't know that it took him over a year to reach his first 25 subscribers. It then took him another 3 years to reach 1,000 subscribers. 4 years of his life. The biggest YouTuber on the planet took 4 years to reach half the amount of subscribers that I currently have. And yes, it's a very different world right now, but I'm nobody. It took him 4 years to get to a point where he was half of nobody. And it wouldn't be until 6 years after his first upload that he would reach 1 million subscribers, which again, on the scale of YouTube channels, isn't that big. And of course, even more years before he took the title he now has as the most subscribed YouTuber on the planet. That's basically a decade of his life, and this guy is like in his mid-20s. He's young, and for the majority of his YouTube career, he was not finding any success. So why was Mr. Beast any different to the millions of other channels which at one point in time had 25 subscribers? Well, clearly it was not the case that Mr. Beast was destined to become the creator he is today, that it was written in the stars that he was born that way. Because if he was born that way, then he would have gained a lot more than 25 subscribers over the space of an entire year. He would have gained a lot more than 1,000 subscribers over the space of 4 years, almost half a decade. What was different? What was different is that he expanded his time horizons. He was willing to wait and work and not see the upside and not see the benefits for longer than anybody else. And you might be thinking, no, that's just a one-off. Okay, let's look at other people that we all know and admire and think are overnight successes. Let's look at Matt Rife. You know the guy, does the TikToks, funny comedian, massive arms, always rizzing girls. He looks a lot like an overnight success. I'll be honest, I made the mistake of thinking that he was an overnight success, because one day he wasn't on my TikTok feed, the next day he was everywhere. Overnight he came into my consciousness, therefore I wrote him off as an overnight success. This guy just got lucky. I thought this guy was just born charismatic, born able to do what he does, to pull in hundreds of millions of views, to sell hundreds of thousands of tickets across the world on his most recent sold out tour. But then I looked into his story and I realized that I was completely wrong, and that his time horizons were enormous. Matt Rife tells this story that for 11 years of his life, he was performing stand-up comedy to basically empty rooms where nobody knew who he was, where nobody had turned up for him, where not only was he not being paid, but actually in many cases he had to pay to be in the room to perform to nobody who laughed, right? He would have to sell 5 tickets to a certain venue to friends and family members who would then come along to earn him the right to be able to stand on that stage. It was pay to play, right? 11 years of his life. Now, on day one, when he stood up on that first stage and did that first stand-up routine, is it more likely that he was so funny that he was immediately ready to have hundreds of thousands of tour tickets sold, millions and millions of followers? Or was it more likely the case that he was just as unfunny, just as awkward, just as shy as everybody else who does their first comedy routine? It's obviously the second option, right? I'm sure, though I wasn't there because I didn't know who he was, that he was terrible, absolutely awful the first time he did stand-up comedy. So why is it that he is where he is today, selling out world tours, and everybody else who does their first stand-up comedy routine, who is equally as unfunny, equally as unprepared, equally as unable to pull an audience in? Why is he different? In my mind, the only answer is that he expanded his time horizon. And it actually gets more interesting, right? Because we think that Mr. Beast was always destined to be Mr. Beast because of a bunch of different factors. We think that Matt Rife was always going to be Matt Rife, or Ed Sheeran was always going to be Ed Sheeran, or Justin Bieber, or anybody you look up to. We think that these people at the top were always destined to be at the top, but that's not true. And we can prove to ourselves that that's not true because we can look at where they began and we can look at their level of skill and their reach and their ability to do at a top level what they currently do. And that ability in 99% of cases of the most successful people you look at was not there. They did not start with ability. They did not start with a network. They did not start with a particular skill which allowed them to be world class. All they did, and all you need to do to be successful in whatever it is you want to do in life, is you just need to keep going for longer than anybody else. Because it's mad to consider this, but there were thousands of Mr. Beasts out there who were neck and neck with him until they weren't. There were thousands of Matt Rifes out there who were just as good as him until they weren't. What was different? What happened to the thousands of Matt Smyths and Mr. Least? What happened is they quit. What happened is they stopped going. What happened is they were playing it too short term. I've been doing this for 6 months and I haven't seen results. It's a me issue. I should give up. I've been doing this for 4 years and I haven't seen results. I'm the problem. I should just quit. You've probably said something to yourself very similar in the past week, right? Whether you're trying to learn a new skill or build a business or transform your body, if you're not seeing results immediately, it's built into our code to just want to quit. Right? Of course it is. The internet will tell you that everything is instant and easy. Nothing's instant and nothing's easy. The only way you will succeed is if you keep going for longer than literally everybody around you without seeing results. Because the only way you see results, the only way you become an outlier by very definition, is by shedding the competition, is by pushing on for longer and for further without having to see the results. Because when you expand your time horizons, you unlock the most powerful tool that every successful person has on their side that is hiding in plain sight, which is compounding growth, right? Matt Rife today could be funnier than anybody else who could ever stand up on a stage. Mr. Beast today could make a video that gets more views than anybody else on the planet. But it's not because they were born that way. It's not because on day one they were able to do this miraculous thing. It's because over the past decade of going without needing to see results, they built the skills that now only they have, which allow them to print results repeatedly on demand. You only get that by going for a decade. You only get that by going for longer than everybody else. And so the next time you're convinced that you're the problem, the next time you're convinced that somebody else may have seen progress by now, stop for a moment, realize that you're 4% into this journey, 7% into this journey. Look as far ahead as you possibly can and realize that the results you want so badly, the results you want so soon, are almost guaranteed if only you keep going. But it's also guaranteed that the second you stop, you'll never get there. You need to expand your time horizons. That's how every successful person you've ever heard of got to where they got to, and it's the only way you're going to get to where you're going.